Okay, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words, directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So bear with me, it's a long purport. It is a qualification of the great thinkers to pick up the best even from the worst. It is said that intelligent men should pick up nectar from a stock of poison, should accept gold even from a filthy place, should accept a good and qualified wife even from an obscure family, and should accept a good lesson even from a man or from a teacher who comes from the untouchables. These are some of the ethical instructions for everyone in every place without exception. But a saint is far above the level of an ordinary man. He is always absorbed in glorifying the Supreme Lord, because by broadcasting the holy name and fame of the Supreme Lord, the polluted atmosphere of the world will change. And as a result of propagating the transcendental literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, people will become sane in their transactions. While preparing this commentation on this particular stanza of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a crisis before us. Our neighboring friend China has attacked the border of India with a militaristic spirit. We have practically no business in the political field, yet we see that previously there were both China and India, and they both lived peacefully for centuries without ill feeling. The reason is that they lived those days in an atmosphere of God consciousness. And every country over the surface of the world was God-fearing, pure-hearted, and simple. And there was no question of political diplomacy. There is no cause of quarrel between the two countries, China and India, over land which is not very suitable for habitation. And certainly there is no cause for fighting on this issue. But due to the age of quarrel, Kali, which we have discussed, there is always a chance of quarrel on slight provocation. This is not due to the issue in question, but to the polluted atmosphere of this age. Systematically, there is propaganda by a section of people to stop glorification of the name and fame of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, there is a great need for disseminating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. It is the duty of every responsible Indian to broadcast the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world, to do all the supermost good as well as to bring about the desired peace in the world. Because India has failed in her duty by neglecting this responsible work, there is so much quarrel and trouble all over the world. We are confident that if the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam is received only by the leading men of the world, certainly there will be a change of heart, and naturally the people in general will follow. The mass of people in general are tools in the hand of the modern politicians and leaders of the people. If there is a change of heart of the leaders only, certainly there will be a radical change in the atmosphere of the world. We know that our honest attempt to present this great literature, conveying transcendental messages for reviving the God consciousness of the people in general and re-spiritualizing the world atmosphere, is fraught with many difficulties. Our presenting this matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail, and there will be so many literary discrepancies despite our honest attempt to present it in the proper way. But we are sure that with all our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration, and the leaders of society will still accept this, due to being an honest attempt to glorify the Almighty God. When there is a fire in a house, the inmates of the house go out to get help from the neighbors, who may be foreigners and yet without knowing the language, the victims of the fire express themselves, and the neighbours understand the need, even though not expressed in the same language. The same spirit of cooperation is needed to broadcast this transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the polluted atmosphere of the world. After all, it is a technical science of spiritual values, and thus we are concerned with the techniques and not with the language. If the techniques of this great literature are understood by the people of the world, there will be success. When there are too many materialistic activities by the people in general all over the world, there is no wonder that people or a nation attacks another person or nation on slight provocation. That is the rule of this age of Kali or quarrel. The atmosphere is already polluted with corruption of all description, and everyone knows it well. There are so many unwanted literatures full of materialistic ideas of sense gratification. In many countries there are bodies appointed by the state to detect and censor obscene literature. This means that neither the government nor the responsible leaders of the public want such literature. Yet it is in the marketplace because the people want it for sense gratification. The people in general want to read. That is a natural instinct. But because their minds are polluted, they want such literatures. Under the circumstances, transcendental literature, like Srimad Bhagavatam, will not only diminish the activities of the corrupt mind of the people in general, but also it will supply food for their hankering after reading some interesting literature. In the beginning, they may not like it because one suffering from jaundice is reluctant to take sugar candy, but we should know that sugar candy is the only remedy for jaundice. Similarly, let there be systematic propaganda for popularizing reading of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, which will act like sugar candy for the jaundice-like condition of sense gratification. When men have a taste for this literature, the other literatures which are catering poison to society will then automatically cease. We are sure, therefore, that everyone in human society will welcome Srimad Bhagavatam, even though it is now presented with so many faults, for it is recommended by Sri Narad, who has very kindly appeared in this chapter. Tadvagvisargo janataga viplavo yasmin pradishlokam abadavachapi namanyanantasya yashon kitaniyat shrinvanti gayanti grinanti sadavaha. On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurummilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanumana Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Haribo. So in our tradition, the acharyas, they are able to make adjustments according to time, place, and circumstance. If someone's not considered an acharya and they make adjustments, then generally they're considered to be bogus. Now, the reason an acharya can make adjustments is because acharya doesn't just understand a set of rules and regulations, but understands the purpose behind them. Therefore, if one has depth of knowledge, then one can adjust the rules to serve the purpose. If one doesn't have that depth of knowledge, then one is limited in what they can do. Now, this seminar is about the application of the Vedic paradigm. Now, my understanding of the Vedic paradigm is more a set of rules without understanding the comprehension behind those rules. Therefore, how to apply the Vedic paradigm in a modern civilization, I confess to being unable to give good answers to that, because I am at the stage where I understand a set of rules rather than really understanding the purpose behind them. It's like, for example, if you could teach someone, say, to be a mechanic based on a set of rules, but then if some situation arises that isn't covered by those rules, then the mechanic cannot do his work. But if while teaching the set of rules, you explain the purpose behind them, then the mechanic can obviously think, well, the purpose behind this is to do this, therefore I'll find a way around this problem. You see? It's all about flexibility. So this particular seminar, if I were to choose a person to give this seminar, I would choose Bhaktivedanta Purna Maharaj. Probably this seminar was created around the person, I imagine. Is that right? Was it that we knew he was coming, therefore we will have a seminar about the Vedic paradigm, its comprehension and application? Yeah, is that right? Is that what? Kind of. So I'll talk maybe a little bit about the paradigm. Because the paradigm is like, well, it's in the books. It's written in black and white. The comprehension, well, I'll try something maybe. As for the modern application, well, probably won't get round to that one. Probably going to stop around 9 o'clock, by the way, just to let you know, for Prasad. But we're flexible. It was supposed to go till 9:30, but I don't think it will, but we'll see what happens anyway. This particular verse, I actually quite like this verse, because it really, for me, it addresses the problem of how to put the Vedic paradigm, how to have it in place. Now, what do we mean by the Vedic paradigm? I'm taking it from the angle of, pretty much from the angle of Varnashram. A Vedic paradigm is a civilization, as a whole way of life. And this particular verse is describing how to bring about a change of consciousness. It's a revolutionary verse. Prabhupada was a revolutionary. The actual word revolutionary doesn't appear in the Sanskrit. But it's viplava, which means flooding, okay? So it's a flood. It's aga viplava. It's a flood that will destroy the sins. We're flooding the world with God consciousness, which will destroy the sins. So Prabhupada has given the term revolutionary to this word viplava. And if we consider, you consider the history of ISKCON, Prabhupada was so pure, so inspiring, that within a decade of his coming to the West, there were farm communities springing up, right? Many of them. And then after the departure of Srila Prabhupada, over the decades, these communities faced problems. So by and large, we've lost a significant part of what Srila Prabhupada came to give us, namely the farming communities. Not only that, communities in general, like the Gurukul system. We had so many Gurukuls were springing up, and now we only have a few left. Cow protection as well. Now, Bhaktivedanta Manor is still holding out to some extent. We have cow protection. We have a Gurukul. It's not, there are different types of Gurukuls. We have a Gurukul which is a kind of halfway house between the modern education system and the Vedic system. Then there are other Gurukuls. In Mayapur, there's a Brahmin school, so on and so forth. But we see how shrunken it has become over the decades. So we may ask the question, why has that happened? And everyone's got a different answer. My answer is, it's really to do to purity of the heart. You see, here's a nice story that I heard from a lecture by Ayendra Prabhu. He said he was on the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party. And Vishnu Jan asked him, he said, would you like to worship the deities? We need someone to look after the deities. Now there's a lot of service involved, a lot of offerings. So Ayendra Prabhu replied, I'd like to do that, but I'm thinking I'll do less Sankirtan if I do that. Vishnu Jan Swami cut him off. I'm not actually sure if he was a Swami at the time, but he cut him off. He said, never say, I'd like to, but. If you'd like to do it, you'd already be doing it. That was his answer. Now, it's a very simple point, but it's actually very profound. Why are we doing the things we do? The answer is because we want to do it. It's like, why do we eat 3 times a day? It's because we want to. Why do we not have farm communities? The answer is quite simple. We don't want to. We know we should, but actually at heart, we don't want to. Now, I'm from the so-called Grihasta community. We call ourselves Grihastas, Grihamedis, Grihastas. Take your pick. Now, if you noticed, if you talk to Grihastas, generally they nearly all say the same thing. Oh, life is such a struggle to pay the bills. I have very little time to do other spiritual activities, right? Now, when we think of farming, we think, well, it's a lot of hard work. And it was. If you read the Hare Krishna explosion. You read when the New Vrindavan project began. And they had no road, and it took ages just to climb up this kind of dirt path, and everything was, there's no electricity. It was just completely difficult to do anything. And you could see the hardship that the devotees were going through. But because they loved Srila Prabhupada, and they knew that that was his desire, it was very nectarian, very blissful. So we have a conception that self-sufficiency is very difficult. Well, the answer is yes, it is difficult, but the alternative is very difficult as well. You consider how much energy, for example, the Grihasta community, how much energy they put into maintaining themselves. It's a big strain. If they put the same amount of energy into trying to set up farming communities, then it wouldn't be an extreme amount of energy in comparison. In fact, it might be even easier. Prabhupada, he said it would be easier. I mean, practically speaking, we find it's very difficult. Prabhupada's conception was, you just work, and for a few months a year, all your food is provided, and then the rest of your time is for simple living, high thinking. Practically speaking, in the farm communities, and one of the problems that devotees had was how much actual work it was, right? It was the complete opposite. But anyway, these are some of the kind of paradoxes that we deal with, or the kind of problems that we deal with. But going back to, we're talking here about the Vedic paradigm. So ultimately it's about desire. If we do what we want to do, if we really have a desire to do it, then it will happen. We'll make the effort. So this particular verse, I find it very applicable to this concept, because it's about bringing about the purification of heart. In fact, the purport is describing how quarrel is due to this lack of purification of the heart. And the purpose of transcendental literature is to satisfy people, bring them to the platform of purity. Now this, we were talking about communities. If anyone's studied physics at school, we have, when you spin a ball on a thread, they analyze it in terms of forces. And there's one force is called the centrifugal force, which is the one that pulls out. And then there's the centripetal force, which brings us in. So the reason why the ball does not spin away is because the string is pulling the ball in. The ball itself is pushing out, the string's pulling in. So we've seen in ISKCON there are so many directions we can try and spread the movement. Some of them are centripetal, they bring us in. Other ones are centrifugal, they push us out. Now, example is, for example, academia. Now, in Prabhupada's time, ISKCON academia was not so developed. Now it's more developed. And it has a valuable purpose in that it puts devotees in contact with academics, and who then, at least in theory, will be influenced by the Vedic perspective. In this purport, Prabhupada is mentioning several times about if only the leaders change, then everyone will change, right? Yesterday, Guru Das brought up this point about the leaders, right? And Maharaj, he made the point, if you depend on the leaders, what ashram, what varna does that make you? And he gave the answer, it means Shudra. Because generally people are Shudras. Kalau Shudra Sambhava. In Kali Yuga, everyone's a Shudra. Therefore, Shudras need a leader. So the point is, if the leaders are Krishna conscious, then the people in general will follow. But because we don't have Krishna-conscious leaders, we can't just expect the leaders to be Krishna-conscious. We have to take the lead and be the example. So hopefully, yesterday I liked some of the points that Maharaj was giving about how we live in a society where the Vaishyas are in control, therefore economics is out of control. And therefore we see a situation where the Shudras, who are motivated by sense gratification, are being exploited by the Vaishyas in an unrestrained way. Therefore we have so many, advertising is based on sinful activity. There's so much advertising on alcohol, cigarettes, things like that. Prostitution, the big business, right? This is out of control. And the reason, there needs to be strong leadership. Now, recently on the internet, someone posted a comment by an American journalist, and I thought it was very, very appropriate. And it went something like this. He's in America. He's talking about the American nation. He says, in the American nation, lawyers have spoiled justice. He said the press has destroyed information. The medical, the doctors are destroying health. The churches are destroying morality. The bankers are destroying the economy. He's describing the current condition of the United States of America. And I mean, you can agree or disagree. I personally think that is pretty close to the truth. But if we analyze these problems, there's a common element to them, and it's greed. It's the reason for this destruction is greed. If you look at, for example, the medical industry, why is it that there are so many drugs which have bad side effects and they're still being sold? And the answer is because there's profit to be made. The doctors, when they do their job, they have a certain set of rules they follow. They say, well, you should recommend this, you shouldn't recommend this, etc. And there's some financial arrangement between the doctors and the pharmaceutical industry. I remember my mother, she said she went to the doctor and the doctor recommended something. My mother then said, would you take that? The doctor then said, no, I wouldn't take it because it's got this side effect, such and such. This is the nature of doctors nowadays. They wouldn't take it themselves, but they will recommend it to you. You've got to do your homework. Or we look at press. Why is the press destroying information? And the answer is ultimately because the government want the people to think a certain way. Therefore, the press will support that way of thinking. And why did the press support that? Because the press is controlled by the oligarchs, by the powerful Vaishyas who also control the government. So we see in all ways that the Vaishyas are controlling everything. It's the same in all aspects of life. Now, what is the Vedic paradigm? Now, we're talking here of Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, but the Vedic paradigm, Brahmanas, we're talking Vaishyas and Sudras, but the Vedic paradigm, we have Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. So the Kshatriyas, now they're trained in Brahminical system. The kings are called Raja Rishis. Why are they Rishis? They have to be trained because they have to know how to do things according to Vedic principles. In the Mahabharata, there's a story of Drupada and Drona. So they went to school together. But Drupada, he became a king, and Drona was a Brahmin. So why are they getting educated together? Because in order to be a good Kshatriya, you have to have proper training in Brahminical standards. Therefore, you're a Rishi. You're not just a king, but you're a Rishi. You're a Raja and a Rishi at the same time. Therefore, you're a Raja Rishi. So when there's strong, this is the point made yesterday, when there is strong government, then the Vaishyas, they can no longer control. Therefore, that element of greed is reduced. Now, Srila Prabhupada, it's actually in the first canto as well, he's describing the effect of Kali, and he's describing the problem of paper money. He describes it as bad money. In Kali Yuga, you replace good money with bad money. By good money, you mean gold. So he gives a remedy for part of this problem of lust for money, and that is to replace paper money with gold. So in Kali Yuga, we should be trading in gold coins. We shouldn't be carrying around paper money. Actually, the system has got even worse. We went from paper money to electronic money. It doesn't exist anymore. It's on our computer screen. So we're trading electronically. But then it gets worse than that. instead of trading actual money, electronic money, we trade what's called options. We trade the option to buy at a certain price some commodity in the future. So it's not even, it's just all very figment of the imagination. And we see how the bankers, they then exploited the system to the max, and then it ended up with all this, remember 3 or 4 years ago, toxic debt? You know, I've heard about this toxic debt. They were like selling off debt, repackaging it and selling it off, and then for some reason the whole system just collapsed. They were just like, money didn't exist, but they were like lending money that didn't exist based on the mortgages and so forth. Anyway, it's a whole system, but it just all collapsed. And then what happened next? Well, the government had to bail out the banks, right? Then the taxpayers had to then bail out the government, right? So we see the system's all, it's the vices in control and how immoral it is. Because the banks were so great that when they collapsed, they're just a business. But when the banks were so great that when they collapsed, the taxpayers bailed them out. But if a small business collapses, then no one bails out the small business. That's tough luck, right? That's the system we have. So if your might is right, that's the system it goes. I mentioned this American journalist. He also said, he mentioned the lawyers have spoiled the justice system. This is also the problem we have. And this is predicted in the 12th canto. It's Dharma Nyaya Vyavastayam Karanam Balam Evahi. In Kali Yuga, justice will be determined by power. We know this. If you have if you can afford a very good lawyer, then you're going to get a good result. That's the way it is. It's just you buy the result. This is the sad reflection we have in Kali Yuga. So, going back to the Vedic paradigm. So then, because there are Kshatriyas who are in control, who are operating on Vedic principles, therefore this greed is reduced. So Prabhupada said we should replace paper money with gold coins. And our economy is based on cow protection, not on cow killing. I was listening to a lecture, Prabhupada made this statement. Our modern civilization, because it's based on, the economy is based on cow killing, therefore it's demonic. But when it's based on cow protection, then that is the basis. Therefore, what is the question of Varnashram without cow protection? It doesn't exist. And Varnashram is so difficult to implement. We have here at Bhaktivedanta Manor, we have cow protection. Do we have an economy based on cow protection? That's the next stage. Can we say we have that? We know we don't, because we know at the council meetings they discuss the problem of what to do about the cost of our milk, which is a lot more than the milk you can buy outside. So we have an economy, we have two economies going, and because there's an interaction between the two, we're at a loss, because the outside system is created in such a way as there is an advantage to their system, where they milk thousands of cows with machines, or where instead of farming individually with a sickle, etc., we have these big machines which can do massive tracts of land. It makes things cheaper. It makes an economy we can't compete with. Therefore, self-sufficiency, in order to address this problem, is to actually have complete self-sufficiency. Then if you're in your complete paradigm, then there's no need to even trade with the outside. But of course, that's, how far away is that? Can we do it even on this amount of land we have here at Bhaktivedanta Manor? So devotees are like, how to do it? Will it ever happen? They think, well, maybe the modern civilization will collapse and then it will happen. Okay, maybe that's going to happen. We don't know yet. But at the moment, because we're reasonably comfortable with our present situation, and the impetus to actually push through a Vedic paradigm is not there. As I mentioned, it's all about at heart. So the solution is actually given in this verse. It is that we hear the Srimad Bhagavatam brings about a change of heart. And naturally, with simple consciousness, we will be attracted to a simple way of life. That's how it works. Now, this Varnashram system, it's described as Sanatan Dharma. It's an interesting term. Why is it called Sanatan Dharma? What is Sanatan Dharma? We think of it as Jivera Swarupahoy Krishnera Nityadas. I'm eternal servant of Krishna. So, generally speaking, we don't refer to Varnashram as Sanatan Dharma. We give it another term. Anyone who's read Jaiva Dharma will know the word I'm thinking of. It begins with N. It's to do with the word nimitta. It has a cause behind it. Same, yeah? It's called Naimittika Dharma. Naimittika Dharma is a temporary Dharma. It applies to one's present material conditioning. Sanatana Dharma we generally refer to as Jaiva Dharma or Shuddha Bhakti, the pure function of the soul, to do unalloyed service to Krishna. And that, our scriptures are mainly focused on that. The Bhagavad Gita ends, Sarva Dharma Prityaja. It means give up other Dharma and Mamekang Sharanam Braja, surrender to Krishna. So it's saying give up Naimittika Dharma and accept Sanatana Dharma. That's what it's saying. And in the Bhagavatam, Savai Pumsham Parodamo, Yato Bhaktir Hoksaji, Ahoitukya Patiyata Yatma Suprasidati. That only when one engaged in unmotivated and unalloyed service and uninterrupted service to the Lord can one be completely satisfied at soul. So that's how we understand Sanatana Dharma. But Varnashram is sometimes called Sanatana Dharma. Now there's a couple of ways to look at it. I once did a little search on the folio to find out why. And I came up with two answers. One is because of where it leads. This Varnashram system, okay, in a short space of time, maybe 100 lives of following Varnashram Dharma, one will become a pure devotee. So in terms of eternity, 100 lives is a very short space of time. It's a blinking of the eye. So the point is, when one connects to Varnashram Dharma, one is on the path to Shuddha Bhakti. Therefore, why not just call it Sanatana Dharma? That's where it leads. You know, the road to London, okay, there's London. It's not London, it's the road to London, but we call it London, right? We're going off to Harinam. Oh, where's London? It's that way. But it's actually the road to London. You know, so the Varnashram, it engages, one eye is on the material world and one eye is on the spiritual world. Shuddha Bhakti, both eyes on the spiritual world. So therefore, it's called Sanatana Dharma. Another reason, and this is an important reason because it's to do with science. The Varnashram system is scientific because it's based on the modes of material nature. Now, the modes of material nature, in effect, they're eternal. Actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's this statement, Prakriti Jan Gunan. The modes are born of Prakriti. So Krishna is making the point to Arjuna that the modes of nature, they're created and destroyed. But Prakriti, material nature, is eternal. Sometimes referred to as Pradhan. So Pradhan is eternal. The modes, they come and go. When Vishnu glances, you know, he activates material nature, then the modes are formed. But although they're not eternal, in a sense they are eternal. Why? Because creation is eternally going on. There's eternally creation and annihilation. Therefore, in a next universe, there will be creation again. The next time the universe is created, the modes will be activated from Pradhan. Like, you follow the point? So the modes themselves are not eternal, but they're always being eternally created and destroyed, just like the universe. The universe is not eternal, but there's always going to be a universe, because Vishnu's breathing is eternal. He's always breathing in and out, therefore universes are being eternally created and destroyed. So the modes are eternal, and therefore the system, how to act within the modes, which is what the Varnash system is. It is that, exactly that. It's Chaturvarnyam Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. The Varnashram system is created according to Guna and Karma. Now Guna, because the Gunas are eternal, there's always going to be three modes. The Karma that goes with that is eternal as well. Therefore, that's what distinguishes Varnashram system from other religions. We have, for example, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism. Well, maybe Buddhism's got an element of the Vedic system in it. But these systems, they're historical. They have a certain point in time. They will last for a certain duration. But it's not that. We don't say that in every creation there will always be Christianity. We don't say that. We don't say there will always be Islam. But we will say there will always be Varnashram, because that's Krishna's system, and it's based on the modes. So that's the difference. Therefore, it's eternal. Therefore, the word for eternal is Sanatan. So when we say Varnashram is Sanatana Dharma, we're meaning that it's not just some historical event. It actually is because it's based on scientific principles. Does that make sense? So these are some reasons why we can consider it Sanatana Dharma. Now, as devotees, how do we view this varnashram system? It's interesting, on the one hand, we look up to it, and on the other hand, we tend to look down on it. And we shouldn't actually look down on it, but the reason we do it is because we have material consciousness. You see, I mentioned sarvadharma and prityaja. So sometimes the acharyas, they point out this refers to varnashram. We give up varnashram. But actually, it's not strictly speaking true that we give up varnashram. What we do is we give up varnashram as our ultimate goal. You know, in this connection, there's the conversation in the 8th chapter of Madhya Lila, Ramananda Roy Samvad. Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy are discussing. So Lord Chaitanya asks Ramananda Roy, what is the ultimate purpose of life? So what was the first answer he gave? Who knows the shloka? Sutta Prabhupada, you know the first shloka? Varna Shrama Charavata Purushena Para Puman Vishnur Arajate Panta Nanyat Tato Shikaranam. Ramananda Roy says, the best way to satisfy the Lord is to engage in his service within the varnashram system. What does Mahaprabhu say? Eho Bhakya. This is external. And then Ramananda Roy gives so many other answers. And he keeps getting the same reply. Eho Bhakya. This is external. At one point, Mahaprabhu accepts. What was the first answer that he accepted? You know? Yes. Jnane prayasa mudapasya namanta eva jivanti san mukaritam bhavadiya vartam stane stita shrutilikatam tanuvan manobir ye prayasho jitajito pyasitais trilokyam. The meaning is, if one gives up the path of Gyan and simply remains in one's Varna and Ashram system and engages in hearing about the Lord, then, from the pure devotees, then the Lord will ultimately be conquered. So when Ramananda Roy said that, the Lord finally accepted. He said, Eho Hoya, which is translated as, well, it means this is. It's translated, this is good. Interesting note, later on, some of the answers are Eho Hoya, this is okay, this is good. But later on, Mahaprabhu says, Eho Uttama. He starts changing it. But to get to that platform, Ramananda Roy had to start talking in terms of spontaneous love. The first statement is Sardam Vijahru Krita Punya Punjaha. You know this verse from the 10th canto. How the cowherd boys, they must have performed heaps of sukriti to be in the position where they can enjoy playing with Krishna as equals. This playing with Krishna as an equal is known as Raganuga Bhakti, spontaneous love. The awe and reverence is not present. Aishvarya Shatili Prema Nahi Mora Prita. The Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that when one's prema is mixed with awe and reverence, it does not ultimately satisfy the Lord. So to get the answer Eho Uttama, which Ramananda Roy, he gets it when he's talking about the cowherd boys, and when he's also talking about Mother Yashoda, because Vatsalya Ras is of the same nature. And when he's talking about the gopis, he gets the same answer because Madhurya Ras is of the same nature. It is spontaneous. So this is the progression. Varnashram, where did it come in this progression? Well, we see it at the beginning. It's rejected as external. But actually, what's ironic, you think about it, the first verse that Mahaprabhu accepted was also a Varnashram verse. It was almost the same verse, in fact, because both verses are saying, worship the Lord within the Varnashram system. The term stane stitaha means just remain in your Varnashram system. Just remain where you are. No need to change. But just hear the pastimes. Hear Janataga Viplavo. All your sins will be destroyed. So what's the difference between the verse that Mahaprabhu accepted and the first verse, which is from I think it's from the Vishnu Purana, Varnashrama Charavata verse. What's the difference? It's a very subtle point, but there is a difference. In the first verse, if you're saying you must follow the Varnashram system in order to please the Lord, what you're saying is you must go through the system. It means you must go from Shudra to Vaishya to Kshatriya to Brahmana. But if you read the teachings of Lord Kapiladev, there's a description of this stani stitaha, what it means. And what it means is you can remain as a Shudra. There's no need to go through any higher. You can stay as a Shudra, but you'll become a Vaishnav. And automatically, Vaishnav means above Brahman. So that it is all about where Varnashram fits. In one verse, Varnashram is an essential part. In the other one, Varnashram is just some little stabilizer to put you in a comfortable position in order to practice pure bhakti. And actually if you look at the term ashram, it can be broken down as follows. Shrama means, what does it mean? Labor, right? Shrama eva kevalam. If one's varnashram method does not produce attraction for the Lord, then it's simply shrama, meaning labor. So what does ashrama mean? It means the opposite. It means comfortable position. That's what an ashram is. It is a situation where you're stable in order to focus on the real goal of life, which is pure devotional service. If you're not in a stable situation materially, how are you going to be able to concentrate on the Lord? So that's why we have a Varnashram system. So we understand this point that the Varnashram system is serving pure devotion, not the other way around. And that is the difference. That is why Varnashram system is rejected as external. But then later on, Mahaprabhu says, yes, that's a good answer. Just remain in your Varnashram. Just keep your Varnashram. Remain in your Varna, remain in your ashram, and worship the Lord. So that's the difference. So, I'm not sure whether to take questions or not. I'm trying to think what I should say. I'll say a few more things. Actually, I'll just take questions.